The table for Elena Martinez had prepared for this evening with meticulous care. The emerald dress that complemented her eyes hung in her closet, pressed and ready. Her makeup sat perfectly applied, highlighting features she'd almost forgotten could look this radiant. For the first time in 18 months, since the accident that changed everything, she'd allowed herself to feel something close to hopeful. Marcus had seemed different from the others on the dating app. His messages were thoughtful, patient, never pitying. When she told him about her wheelchair, he'd responded with a simple, "That doesn't change anything about who you are." She'd wanted desperately to believe him. Now, sitting alone at La Maison Dorée, one of the city's most prestigious restaurants, Elena checked her phone for the 7th time. 43 minutes late. 3 unanswered texts. The waiter had refilled her water glass twice, his professionally neutral expression not quite masking his sympathy. Around her, couples laughed over candlelit tables, their easy intimacy a painful reminder of what she'd lost, or perhaps never had. She felt the familiar weight settling over her shoulders, that suffocating blanket of isolation she'd fought so hard to throw off. The other diners weren't staring exactly, but she caught the sidelong glances, the whispered conversations that paused as she wheeled past. She'd become used to being seen as a tragedy rather than a person, but tonight it cut deeper than usual. "Would Madame like to order?" the waiter asked gently, approaching her table. Elena swallowed hard, pride warring with humiliation. "Just a few more minutes," she managed, though they both knew Marcus wasn't coming. She was reaching for her purse, preparing to leave with whatever dignity she could salvage, when the restaurant's main entrance opened. A man in an impeccably tailored navy suit entered, his presence commanding immediate attention, but it wasn't his expensive clothing or confident bearing. That caught Elena's eye. It was the small boy clutching his hand, no more than 5 years old, dressed in a miniature version of his father's formal attire. The maitre d' rushed forward. "Mr. Ashford, your usual table is ready." "Actually," the man interrupted, his voice carrying a warmth that contradicted his intimidating appearance, "I think we'll sit there." He nodded toward the table directly beside Elena's. Elena's breath caught. She recognized him now. Alexander Ashford, CEO of Ashford Industries, whose face graced business magazines and philanthropic galas. What was he doing at the table next to hers when the restaurant clearly had private sections for someone of his stature? The little boy, with his father's dark hair and impossibly large brown eyes, immediately noticed Elena. "Daddy, look, that lady has a special chair, like the one Uncle James had at the hospital." "Oliver," Alexander said softly, settling into his seat, "we don't—" "It's all right," Elena found herself saying, surprising herself. Children's curiosity had never bothered her the way adults' pity did. "Yes, it's a special chair. It helps me get around because my legs don't work like yours do." Oliver's eyes widened with fascination rather than discomfort. "That's really cool. Can it go fast?" Despite her heartache, Elena smiled. "Sometimes. When I'm racing my physical therapist in the hallways." "Do you win?" "Always." Oliver giggled, and Alexander's stern expression softened into something genuine. "I apologize. My son has no filter, which is refreshing most of the time and mortifying the rest." "Don't apologize," Elena said. "Honest questions are better than awkward silence." Their eyes met, and Elena saw something unexpected there. Not pity, not discomfort, but recognition. As if he understood something about her situation that others missed. The waiter appeared at Alexander's table. "The usual for you, Mr. Ashford. Actually, tonight's special. It's Oliver's birthday, 5 years old today. We'll have whatever the chef recommends for a celebration." Oliver beamed, kicking his small legs under the table. "Daddy promised me grown-up dinner because I'm big now." Elena felt a pang in her chest, a father celebrating his son's birthday. She glanced at her phone again, still nothing from Marcus. She should leave, spare herself further embarrassment. "Are you waiting for someone?" Oliver asked with that unfiltered directness only children possess. "Oliver," Alexander began. "I was," Elena admitted, her voice steadier than she felt, "but I don't think they're coming." "That's silly," Oliver declared with 5-year-old certainty. "Why wouldn't someone come to dinner with you? You're pretty and you said you can race in your chair. You're like a superhero." Elena laughed, a real laugh that surprised her. "That's the nicest thing anyone said to me in months." Alexander was watching her with those perceptive eyes. Oliver's right about one thing: standing someone up is inexcusable regardless of the reason. He paused, seeming to make a decision. This might be forward, but it's my son's birthday, and frankly, birthday dinners are better with more people. Would you consider joining us? No pressure, but the invitation is genuine. Elena stared at him, searching for the catch. Men like Alexander Ashford didn't invite women like her. Women's society had already written off to birthday dinners. But his expression held no pity, no charity. Just a simple offer from one person to another. I wouldn't want to intrude on your celebration, she said carefully. You wouldn't be intruding, Oliver piped up. Mommy's in heaven, so it's just me and Daddy now. And Daddy says the best parties are the ones with friends, even new ones. The revelation hung in the air. Alexander's jaw tightened briefly. Grief, Elena recognized, still raw despite whatever time had passed. She understood that look. She'd worn it herself when people asked about her dancing career, about the professional future that had died on a rain-slicked highway. Then I'd be honored, Elena said quietly, wheeling closer to their table. Alexander signaled the waiter, who smoothly rearranged the settings to accommodate three. As the staff moved with practiced efficiency, Elena caught the looks exchanged between servers: speculation, curiosity, but also approval. Alexander Ashford was clearly a respected regular, and his kindness seemed to be a known trait. So, Alexander said once they were settled, Oliver tells me you're a superhero. What are your other superpowers? Elena found herself relaxing, drawn in by the genuine interest in his voice. Well, before the accident, I was a professional ballet dancer. Now I teach adaptive dance classes twice a week. Adaptive dance? Oliver asked. Dance for people who move differently than you do. Some use wheelchairs like me, some use crutches. Some move in ways that are all their own. We teach that everyone can dance, just maybe not the way you'd expect. Alexander leaned forward slightly. That's remarkable. How did you transition from performing to teaching? And just like that, Elena found herself talking, really talking, about things she usually kept locked away. She told them about the accident, the months of rehabilitation, the devastating moment when doctors confirmed she'd never dance professionally again. But she also talked about the unexpected gift hidden in the tragedy, discovering that teaching brought her a joy performing never had, that adaptive dance opened worlds she'd never known existed. Alexander listened with an intensity that made her feel truly seen. He asked thoughtful questions, never intrusive, always respectful. When the food arrived, exquisite courses that Oliver attacked with birthday enthusiasm, the conversation flowed naturally to Alexander's own story. I took over Ashford Industries when my father passed 6 years ago, he explained, cutting Oliver's steak into manageable pieces. Same time Oliver was born, actually. My wife Caroline, she was the one who kept everything balanced. When she died 3 years ago, cancer, I didn't know how I'd manage a corporation and a toddler. But you did, Elena said softly. Not gracefully. I made every mistake possible, tried to solve grief with work, nearly missed Oliver's entire childhood in the process. He ruffled his son's hair affectionately. Took me 2 years to realize that being present was more important than being perfect. Elena understood. People expect you to bounce back, to be fixed on their timeline, like grief and adaptation have expiration dates. Exactly, Alexander said, and the understanding in his eyes made her chest tighten. Oliver, oblivious to the depth of the adult conversation, was more focused on his chocolate cake. Miss Elena, can I try your chair sometime? I promise I'd be careful. Oliver, that's not appropriate. Actually, Elena interrupted, I think that would be fine. Maybe sometime I could show you some moves, though I warn you, wheelchair dancing is harder than it looks. The boy's face lit up. Really? Daddy, can we? Alexander looked at Elena with something like gratitude. Are you sure? You don't have to. I want to, Elena said, and realized she meant it. This strange, unexpected evening had given her something she'd thought lost: connection. Not pity, not charity, but genuine human connection with people who saw her as whole. As dinner wound down and Oliver began showing signs of 5-year-old exhaustion, Alexander insisted on paying the entire bill. Before you protest, he said, it's my son's birthday. Having you here made it memorable. That's a gift worth more than dinner. Outside the restaurant, the evening air carried the first hints of autumn. Oliver had fallen asleep against his father's shoulder, tiny arms wrapped around his neck. The vulnerability in Alexander's expression as he held his sleeping child made Elena's breath catch. This powerful man was, at his core, simply a father doing his best. Thank you, Elena. For tonight, I came here expecting humiliation, and you gave me something I'd almost stopped believing in, which is that I could still be just Elena, not the accident victim, not the wheelchair user, not the former dancer, just me. Alexander shifted Oliver gently, reaching into his jacket for a business card. I'd like to see you again, and before you think this is pity or charity, let me be clear. I find you fascinating, Elena Martinez. Your strength, your honesty, the way you turn tragedy into purpose. That's rare. Elena took the card, her fingers trembling slightly. You're not what I expected. Good. Expectations are overrated. He smiled, and she saw traces of the same vulnerability she felt. Oliver wasn't joking about wanting to try your chair. Would you be open to teaching him some adaptive dance basics? I think it would be good for him, and honestly, good for me too. I've spent 3 years building walls around our grief. Maybe it's time to let someone in. I'd like that, Elena whispered. As Alexander's car pulled up, a practical SUV, not the ostentatious vehicle she might have expected, he paused. That person who stood you up tonight, they're a fool. But I'm grateful for their foolishness. It brought you into our lives. Elena watched them drive away, Oliver's sleeping form visible through the window, Alexander's protective hand on his son's shoulder. She looked at the business card in her hand, then at her phone, where Marcus's silence screamed louder than any excuse could. For the first time since the accident, she didn't feel defined by what she'd lost. Tonight, she'd been reminded of what remained, her wit, her warmth, her ability to connect. And maybe, just maybe, the possibility of something new. As she wheeled toward her accessible van, Elena realized the evening hadn't been about Marcus at all. It had been about remembering that she deserved to be seen, valued, celebrated. Not despite her wheelchair, not because of it, but as the complete, complex, worthy person she'd always been. And perhaps, in an elegant restaurant on a night that started with heartbreak, she'd found something unexpected. Two people who saw exactly that.